If you're a freelancer, solo creator, or self-employed person who has ever completely lost it over a broken printer at 11 p.m., this video is specifically for you, not for people with coworkers, not for people who can just lean over and say, "Hey, does this look weird to you?" No. This is for the people who are the IT department, the HR department, the accounting department, and the emotional support system, all at once, all alone, in the same room where they also eat cereal for dinner. In part 1, we talked about why small problems feel huge when you're working alone. Today in part 2, we're going deeper, because knowing why it happens is only half the story. The other half is what your brain is actually doing in those moments. And honestly, once you see it, you can't unsee it. So let's pick up where we left off. In part 1, we introduced the idea of the help reset, this phenomenon where your nervous system, after long enough periods of working alone without co-regulation, starts treating every obstacle like a genuine threat. A client email that says, "Can we chat?" feels like a legal summons. A software update that breaks your workflow feels like a personal attack from the universe. And a Wi-Fi dropout during a live call feels like the final boss of a video game you didn't sign up to play. We established that this isn't weakness, it's neuroscience. But here's the thing I promised you at the end of part 1, and I want you to hold on to this. The reason it keeps happening, even after you know about it, comes down to one specific pattern your brain is running on autopilot. And we're going to name that pattern today. Let me introduce you to someone. Her name is Priya, and she's a freelance UX designer who has been working from home for about 3 years. Priya is good at her job. Priya is professional. Priya has a very nice desk setup and a Notion board that would make productivity influencers weep with joy. And Priya completely lost it last Tuesday because her PDF wouldn't export correctly. Not a client crisis, not a missed deadline, a PDF. She sat there for 45 minutes, progressively more furious, until she was genuinely questioning whether she was cut out for this career, whether her whole business model was broken, and whether she should have just taken that corporate job in 2021. Over a PDF. We're going to come back to Priya because what happened to her is the clearest example I've seen of the pattern we're talking about today. Okay, so here's the pattern. Psychologists call it catastrophic appraisal, but I prefer to call it the avalanche brain because that's exactly what it feels like. You're standing on a perfectly stable mountain, a small pebble rolls, and your brain immediately calculates that this is the beginning of an avalanche that will bury you alive. Now, in a healthy co-regulated environment, meaning around other people, this process gets interrupted constantly. Someone says, "Oh, that's annoying, have you tried restarting it?" And suddenly your nervous system gets a tiny dose of external regulation. The problem feels small again because someone else treated it as small. But when you're alone, there's no one to interrupt the avalanche. The pebble rolls, and your brain just keeps calculating, and calculating, and calculating, until a PDF export error has somehow become evidence that you made a terrible life choice. Now here's the part that surprised me when I first read the research on this, and I think it's going to reframe some things for you. The avalanche brain isn't a flaw in your thinking. It's actually your threat detection system doing exactly what it was designed to do. It's just designed for a social environment that no longer exists for you. Humans evolved to solve problems in groups. When one person spotted a threat, the group's collective reaction calibrated how serious it was. If everyone panicked, it was serious. If someone shrugged, you shrugged. Your nervous system was literally built to outsource part of its threat assessment to the people around you. So when you remove those people, when you go solo, when you work alone, when you stop having colleagues, your brain doesn't just lose the company. It loses a core piece of its operating system, and it compensates by turning up the internal alarm volume. Because if no one else is going to tell you when something is serious, your brain decides it better assume everything is serious. Curious, so the question becomes, and this is the one I want you to sit with for a second, if your brain is running a threat assessment that was designed for a group, and you've removed the group, what exactly is it using as a reference point now? The answer is, it's using you. It's using your mood, your energy level, your hunger, your sleep debt, your unread emails, and every unresolved thing you've been carrying alone for the past 6 months. Which means your threat assessment isn't objective anymore. It's a mirror of your current internal state. And if your internal state is depleted, which, if you're a solo creator who's been grinding without enough rest or human contact, it almost certainly is, then everything gets flagged as a threat. The PDF isn't the problem. The PDF is just the thing that finally made the alarm go off. This is what I mean when I say small problems feel huge when you're alone. It's not that you're being dramatic. It's that your brain has genuinely recalibrated its baseline upward. And here's the cruel part. The more depleted you are, the higher that baseline goes, which means the smaller the trigger needs to be to set off the alarm. Early in your solo career, maybe it took a genuine client crisis to knock you sideways. A year in, it's a confusing invoice. 2 years in, it's a PDF. 3 years in, and I say this with love, it's the font in your email signature, and you've been staring at it for 20 minutes wondering if it's undermining your professional credibility. This is the escalation pattern, and it's not a character flaw. It's a calibration problem. Let's go back to Priya and the PDF, because what happened in those 45 minutes is a perfect case study in how this escalation works in real time. It started as a technical problem. The PDF wouldn't export. Totally solvable. But Priya had been working alone for 11 days straight without a meaningful conversation with another adult. She was running on about 6 hours of sleep. She had 3 client deliverables due that week, and she hadn't eaten lunch yet. So when the PDF failed, her brain didn't assess it in isolation. It assessed it against the backdrop of everything she'd been carrying alone. And the calculation came back. This is the thing that breaks you. Not because the PDF was catastrophic, but because Priya's internal reference point, her depleted, overstressed, underregulated nervous system, said the alarm should be at maximum. The PDF was just the last pebble on an already overloaded slope. Serious, and here's what I want you to understand, because this is the part that actually matters for your mental health as a creator. When Priya started questioning her career over that PDF, that wasn't irrational. That was her brain doing something very specific. It was trying to find a narrative that matched the size of the alarm it was feeling. If the alarm is going off at a 10, but the visible problem is only a 2, your brain will search for a story big enough to justify the 10. And the story it usually lands on is something existential. Maybe I'm not cut out for this. Maybe the whole business is broken. Maybe I made the wrong choice. These thoughts aren't insights. They're your brain trying to make the math add up. The alarm is real. The story it attaches to is not. Okay, so here's the midpoint promise I want to make you right now, because we're about halfway through, and I don't want you to walk away with just a really well-explained problem. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you the specific thing Priya did, not a productivity hack, not a mindset shift, not a journaling prompt, that actually interrupted the avalanche brain in the moment. And I'll tell you exactly why it worked, because understanding the mechanism is what makes it stick. But first, I want to talk about the thing most solo creators try to do when this happens, because it's the most common mistake I see, and it makes everything worse. The most common thing solo creators do when the alarm goes off is try to think their way out of it. And I completely understand why, because thinking is what you're good at. You're a smart person. You solve problems for a living. So when a problem feels huge, your instinct is to apply more brain to it. You start analyzing why you're upset. You start making lists. You start researching solutions at 11 p.m. You open 17 browser tabs. You write a very detailed voice memo to yourself about your feelings. And none of it works because, and this is the key insight, you cannot think your way out of a nervous system response. The avalanche brain isn't a thinking problem. It's a regulation problem. And regulation doesn't happen in your head. It happens in your body, and it happens through connection. Sarcastic, which is why the advice, just think positively, or reframe your mindset, when you're in full avalanche brain mode is, how do I put this kindly, about as useful as telling someone who's drowning to think about swimming differently. The reframe doesn't land when your nervous system is in threat mode, because the part of your brain that processes nuance and perspective is literally less active when you're stressed. You're not being resistant to the advice. You're physiologically less able to use it in that moment. This is why "just calm down" has never once in the history of human communication made anyone calm down. So what did Priya actually do? And look, I want to be honest with you, she didn't do something revolutionary. She didn't meditate for 20 minutes or call her therapist or do a full nervous system reset protocol. She texted her friend Marco and said, "My PDF is broken and I'm spiraling. Please say something normal." And Marco said, "That's so annoying. Have you tried exporting as a different file type first?" That's it. That's the whole intervention. And within about 4 minutes, Priya's alarm had dropped from a 10 to about a 3. She exported the PDF as a different file type. It worked. And she went and made herself lunch. The career crisis evaporated. Not because the problem was solved first, because her nervous system got a dose of external regulation first. Now, here's why that worked, and this is the part I really want you to understand, because it's not just about texting a friend. What Marco's response did was provide co-regulation. His calm, practical, slightly bored reaction to the problem gave Priya's nervous system an external reference point. "Is this serious?" her nervous system asked. Marco's energy said, "Nah, it's just a file type thing." And that external signal, that borrowed calm, interrupted the avalanche. This is called social baseline theory, and it's one of the most fascinating things in social neuroscience right now. The basic idea is that your brain doesn't just use other people for company. It uses them as a resource for managing threat. When you have access to other people, your brain literally calculates threats as less costly because it knows it doesn't have to handle them alone. When you're isolated, the same threats get calculated as more costly because your brain knows you're on your own. And that one got me, honestly, when I first came across the research. Because it means the solution to the avalanche brain isn't primarily internal. It's not about becoming more resilient or more stoic or more disciplined. It's about maintaining access to other people's nervous systems, not because you're weak, but because that's literally how your nervous system was built to function. You are not supposed to regulate alone. The expectation that you should be able to is a very recent, very culturally specific, and, I would argue, pretty harmful idea, especially for solo creators who have been told that independence is the whole point. So let's talk about what this actually means for how you structure your life as a solo creator, because this isn't just interesting neuroscience, it has real, practical implications for how you work. The first implication is this: connection isn't a reward you get after the work is done. It's a resource you need before and during the work, so that when the inevitable small crisis hits, your baseline isn't already at a 9. If you're waiting until the weekend to have a real conversation with another human being, you're essentially running your threat detection system on low battery all week, and then wondering why everything feels like an emergency by Thursday. The second implication is that the type of connection matters. Passive connection, scrolling through social media, watching other people's content, being technically online, does not provide co-regulation. Your nervous system knows the difference between a real interaction and a performance. Watching someone's YouTube video, even a really good one, even this one, does not give your brain the external reference point it needs. It needs reciprocal interaction, something where another person is actually responding to you specifically. A text exchange, a voice note, a quick call, a carking session where someone else is just present. The bar is actually pretty low, but it has to be real. Excited, and here's the third implication, which is the one I find most useful as a practical tool. You can actually pre-regulate before you know you'll need it. This is what Priya started doing after the PDF incident. Every morning, before she opened her laptop, she sent one voice note to a friend or fellow freelancer, not about work, just something real. Some days it was a complaint about her upstairs neighbor. Some days it was a funny thing she'd seen. Some days it was, "I'm anxious about this client call today." The content didn't matter. What mattered was that she was starting her nervous system's day with a real reciprocal connection, so that when the inevitable small crisis hit at 2 p.m., her baseline was already lower. The avalanche threshold was higher. The pebble had to be bigger to start the slide. Now I want to be clear about something, because I know some of you are already thinking, "But I'm an introvert," or "But I don't have time for this," or "But the whole reason I went freelance was to not have to talk to people all day." And those are all valid. This isn't about becoming a social butterfly or scheduling 3 coffee dates a week or joining a networking group that you'll resent by the 3rd meeting. It's about understanding that your nervous system has a minimum viable social dose, and that dose is probably smaller than you think, but it does need to happen. One real interaction, one voice note, one text exchange that isn't about a deliverable. That's often enough to keep the baseline manageable. You're not building a social life from scratch, you're just keeping the operating system running. Let's bring it back to Priya one more time, because I want to show you what 3 months of pre-regulation actually looked like in practice. She still had hard days. She still had client problems and technical failures and moments where the work felt impossible. But the PDF-level crises, the ones where a small technical problem spiraled into a career crisis, those basically stopped. Not because her problems got smaller, but because her baseline got lower. Her nervous system had enough regular co-regulation that it stopped treating every obstacle as a survival-level threat. She described it as the volume on everything turned down. Same problems, same workload, same solo career, but the alarm was calibrated correctly again. That's the help reset, not a dramatic transformation, just a recalibration. So here's what I want you to do this week, and I'm being very specific on purpose, because be more connected is not an action, it's a fortune cookie. Pick one person in your life who you can send a real, non-work voice note to tomorrow morning before you open your laptop. It doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be meaningful. It can literally be, "I just saw a pigeon steal an entire slice of pizza, and I needed to tell someone." The point is the reciprocal loop. You send something real, they respond, your nervous system gets a reference point that isn't just your own depleted internal state. Do that for 5 days and notice what happens to your baseline. Notice how the small crises land differently. That's your data. That's how you know this is working. In part 3, the final part of this series, we're going to talk about what happens when the Avalanche Brain has been running for so long that the recalibration feels impossible. Because some of you aren't just dealing with a slightly elevated baseline. Some of you are in a place where the alarm has been at a 9 for so long that you've forgotten what a 3 feels like. And that's a different conversation, with a different set of tools, and it deserves its own space. Part 3 is going to go there. If you've been in the solo creator world for a while, and you've noticed that the depletion keeps coming back no matter what you try, that one is specifically for you. Until then, send the voice note. Keep the operating system running. And remember that needing other people isn't a design flaw. It's the whole design.